now I'll introduce Will Justice. Will Justice is a digital arts and new media MFA candidate at the University of California at Santa Cruz. He received his BA in English Literature from Reno College, Salem, Virginia. He is also an artist who works in video, internet art, digital media, and electronic music.
Okay, so I guess as I'm setting up, I can attempt to describe where I fit in comparison, I guess, based on that wonderful presentation. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks. And I guess in contrast, I'm looking at applying some kind of theoretical models to really dismantle some simple canonical pieces of internet art in a way that will allow us to see these performative aspects that we're talking about with regards to internet collaborative art, things going on in Second Life. While my paper isn't directly related to Second Life, it is abstractly, conceptually talking about the same thing in many respects. So clearly on a level, what I'm talking about can be applied to Second Life. I'm really just talking about essentially one is a bit more written as well, so I'll try to break it. Some experts suggest that writing a good paper involves about 3% insight and about 97% not getting distracted by the internet. Work in my field, however, depends on a fair amount of internet distraction for its inspiration. To situate myself quite clearly, I'm coming from a position of advocacy. Advocacy of myself being here, advocacy of my field of study, advocacy of interdisciplinary methodologies, and advocacy of some intelligent people who are producing some very interesting work that address a variety of social issues which directly involve our engagement with the internet. In this paper, I seek to address in an interdisciplinary fashion selected internet art and new media works that make use of commercial platforms from points of view including but not limited to performance, comedic convention, and iconolinguistic rhetoric. Hopefully this will also activate discourse on issues from how these works function culturally to how we intend to deal with them as agents of the academy and most primarily as consumers of cultural production, to ask the question, what are the ethics and responsibilities of institutions with regards to the unavoidable reality that someone is going to have to step up and handle / make sense of / legitimize things that are happening in new media to some degree. I realize that the very nature of interdisciplinarity may seem to, in some sense, contradict the type of specialization that is historically known as, if not a primary, a very foundational rationale for the establishment of institutions of higher learning. We need specialists, they used to explain. Now it seems that isn't enough, particularly, I would say, with regards to digital media and medias that combine mediums with marginal modalities and qualify as multimedia, or due to a lack of historical precedent, new media. Standing on my soapbox, I often find it necessary to consult a variety of disciplines while embracing the view that there might be something about over-specialization that goes against the very nature of higher education. In other words, I see it as my responsibility as a learner to engage issues and apply methodologies that may at first seem unfamiliar, off-putting, or challenging. On that note, internet art. It's interesting to point out that before the World Wide Web and HTML, the internet, then ARPANET, was quote unquote designed for the primary function of existing as a communication system immune to nuclear attacks. In one sense, this infrastructure is a military property developed specifically as a response to a particular crisis in the nuclear age, and yet is something beyond the digital divide that is a variety of things to many people worldwide. Furthermore, we have an example of something, the idea of which was conceived by the Academy, was developed by DARPA, ultimately with taxpayer money, and as far as I know, is not directly capable of killing somebody at this point in time, and is in fact something that many people use safely every day. This is something you can't say about many things that DARPA likes taking credit for. Now, what I'm about to show you are several examples of how some producers of online culture are in many ways offering alternatives to the somewhat limited and consumptive ideals in which many dominant commercial and government entities want online society at large to view the internet. That being said, part of establishing an important function of the internet as a site of cultural production requires an amount of activity that literally takes place inside the internet. The government, despite its previous intentions to regulate communications content in the pursuit of preserving decency, has shown interest in the multiplayer via internet first-person shooter model that is also situated in recreating a somewhat realistic military experience. This model being popularized by games like Counter-Strike, wherein multiplayer arenas are literally divided into groups of terrorists versus counter-terrorists. In the military's own incarnation, America's Army, violent prowess and respect of one's chain of command reign as dominant values in a construct where everyone playing the game is represented as a soldier in the United States Army that is engaging an army of enemies. However, in multiplayer mode, opposing forces have to be other connected users who are also playing under the pretense that they are U.S. soldiers fighting some poor bastards who dare defy our government. Artists Anne-Marie Schwiener, Joan Leandri, and Brody Condon's piece, Velvet Strike, attempts to address this notion of a multiplayer online violent activity as leisure within the definitive example, Counter-Strike. Supposedly conceptualized as a direct response to Bush's war on terror, Velvet Strike is a collection of anti-war graffiti that can be sprayed on the walls of multiplayer maps within Counter-Strike environments. So essentially, this is a collection of graffiti designs that can be sprayed on the walls as gamers play this online multiplayer shooting game. The designs of the taggings immediately ranging from heart-shaped formations to stamps bearing the directive, shoot love bubbles, and the proposed caption, hostages of military fantasy. One of my favorite questions to ask in a situation like this is, why is this or how could it be funny? From the point of view of performance, imagining that this act is a piece of theater staged for our consumption, we bear witness essentially to an extremely incongruous situation. It is exactly what we least expect to see when we are confronted with in an environment that encompasses an ideology so dominant it becomes naturalized as a non-ideology. While the presumed function of consuming such a product clearly seems to satiate and further exacerbate human urges for quote-unquote tactical violence, as the box may describe on the retail shelf, it is not difficult to imagine alternative functions that the product may serve. This basic comedic structure of incongruence is to some extent universal. Its function is to often deconstruct particular identifiable social constructions. It's important to point out that what's literally being offered here in the form of programming is the ability to do something new physically and ideologically within the context of a structure that is decidedly very limited in its original form. Mechanically, it is the production and distribution of a coded object designed to be implemented within a greater program, which due to its open-ended production allows flexibility for people who seek to mod or modify their gaming experiences. However, experiencing this from the point of view of performance, from the point of view of actually playing the game, allows one to more clearly understand it as an empirical unit of social change.